Four Crowns. Episode 4, Flame. Written by Mia. The thing about four men who'd rather fight each other than breathe the same air is that it takes something genuinely trying to kill them to make them beautiful together. And at 3 a.m, 3 days into being the keystone of Veymoor, something genuinely trying to kill us came up the tower stairs, and I got to watch. They moved before I was fully awake. That was the bond. I felt it snap taut, for threads going to war at once, and by the time I'd rolled out of the keystone's bed with my paring knife, I'd never given it back. I never will. The four of them were already a machine. Whatever the houses had bickered about over coffee was simply gone, burned off, and in its place was the thing the Accord had been built to make. Shadow folding the dark into a blade, iron a wall of muscle at the door, tide rising in the stairwell to drown what came up it, and flame, Cass, standing in the center of the room between me and everything, both hands full of gold fire, grinning, like a man who'd finally been handed the one thing he was actually good for. What came up the stairs was not the formless wrongness from my bar. This was worse, because this was made, a thing of stitched shadow and stolen teeth, built by a craftsman, sent with a purpose, and the purpose was me. It went through Bram's wall, like the wall was a suggestion. It turned runes tied to steam, and it came across the room for the keystone with an awful single-minded hunger, and Cass met it. I have never seen anything like Cass met it.
He burned.
Not the laughing party trick fire from my bar. This was a furnace, a sun pulled down into a man's 2 hands, and he poured it into the made thing and held, feet braced, grin gone now, teeth bared, taking the thing's whole murderous weight on a wall of flame while it clawed toward me an inch at a time. And I felt, down the gold thread, exactly what it was costing him, and exactly the thing he'd never once said out loud in 3 days of saying everything. Let me be the one that matters. Just once. Let me be the one who was enough. And I did the thing I'd spend the next weeks pretending hadn't happened, because I didn't understand it, and it frightened me more than the made thing did. I felt Cass faltering, felt the gold thread thinning, the furnace guttering, a man at the absolute end of himself. And without deciding to, I reached for it down the bond, the way you'd grab a falling person's wrist. And something in me opened, some locked cellar door I hadn't known was there, and I poured, I don't have a better word, I poured into him, into the thread, and Cass's guttering furnace roared back up white hot, twice the size, enough, and the made thing screamed for the first time. I felt the other 3 threads go shock still. Keystones anchor. Keystones hold the houses in balance. Keystones do not reach down a bond mid-fight and hand a champion twice the power he was born with. That isn't what an anchor does. That's what a source does. And in the scorched aftermath, I caught Sable looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on him. Not strategy, not want, but fear. The precise fear of a man who's just watched a tool do something only a weapon should be able to do, and is recalculating everything. We won. Barely. It was Sable, in the end, who found the seam in the made thing's craftsmanship. The left shoulder, it's sewn wrong now, and Bram who tore it open, and Rune who drowned what spilled out, and Cass who burned the rest to ash. And then it was over, and the Keystone's tower was scorched and flooded and full of 4 men breathing hard, alive, and me, alive, in the middle of them. And on the floor, where the made thing had come apart, was the clue that turned a near death into something far worse, a sigil, burned into the stitched shadow at its heart, half melted but legible, a house mark.
Tide.
That's not possible, Rune said. He'd gone gray. He was holding the scrap of shadow stuff with the drowned remains of his own house's sigil on it, and I felt the tide thread go cold and sick in my chest. House Tide did not send that. I would know. I would feel it. It's my house. Of course Tide didn't send it, Sable said quietly, and his cold eyes had gone to the middle distance, the place they went when he was seeing 3 moves ahead and hating all of them. It was made to be found. A thing sent to kill the keystone, stamped with Tide's mark, dying conveniently where 4 witnesses from 4 houses would see it. By tomorrow noon, every house in Veymoor will have heard that House Tide tried to murder the keystone and break the accord. He looked at Rune, and for once there was something almost like sympathy in it. Someone just used your house to start the war, and done it well enough that your own allies will believe it. And I stood in the wreckage and understood the shape of Sable's mother's plot all at once. She didn't need to kill me. She needed the houses to break the accord, so that when it shattered, no one could blame Shadow. She was going to frame them into a war, 1 house at a time, and she'd started with the gentlest of the 4, because the gentlest is always the easiest to make a monster of. Rune sat down on the wet stone, which I'd never seen him do, the steady one, the deep water, just sat, holding his own house's sigil in his hands like a dead bird. They'll believe it, he said low. That's what she's counted on. My house has been the quiet one for 300 years, and quiet reads as hiding something, and a city looking for a monster will take the one that doesn't shout to defend itself. By noon, I'll be the Keystone's would-be killer. My own house will disown me to save itself, and they'll be right to, strategically, and he stopped. Bram crouched in front of him, and the feral one, who I'd have bet couldn't do gentle, put a hand on the back of Rune's neck, rough and certain. Then we prove it, Bram said. Whoever stitched that thing left hands on it. Things made of makers. We find the maker. And Sable, quietly from the dark. We have until noon. And we have a keystone who, it appears, is not entirely what any of us was told she'd be. His eyes found mine again, that new fear in them, and I understood I'd have to deal with what I'd done to Cass's fire. But later, after we'd kept a war from starting before lunch. I found Cass afterward, alone on the scorched terrace, and the grin was gone, and that was how I knew to be careful, because a Cass without his grin was a thing I'd never seen, and I understood instinctively that I was being shown something nobody else got to see. Hey, I said, you held a sun in your hands tonight. That was... It's the only thing I'm good for. He said it lightly, which was how I'd learned, in 3 days, that he said the things that weren't light at all. He was looking at his own hands, the hands that had held back a death made for me. You'll have noticed the others have jobs. Real ones. Sable thinks, Bram protects, Rune holds it all together. And I, the ghost of the grin, awful now, I'm the funny one. House Flame Spare. The charming second son they send to parties because he's no use in a council and no threat in a war, and he makes everyone laugh, so they don't notice the family's got nothing else to offer. He closed his hands. I had a person once. Before the rite. Someone it doesn't matter. House Flame needed an alliance, and I wasn't a good enough card to keep her from being played for it. And she went to a better house, a useful son, and everyone agreed it was the sensible thing, and I made a joke about it at the wedding, and everyone laughed. His voice didn't break. That was the worst of it. He'd had so much practice. So you'll forgive me, Ava, if the one thing I'm good for is standing between you and the fire. It's the only time I've ever felt like the one who mattered instead of the one who's funny. Don't tell the others I said any of this. I'll deny it, and I'll be charming about it, and you'll half believe I made it up. And I did the thing I'm not supposed to do, the thing the rite forbids, the thing that's going to get a city killed. I crossed the terrace and I took his burned warm hands in mine, and I made him look at me, and I said, "Cass, listen to me, because I have spent my entire life being the spare, the kid they took for the stipend, the one nobody kept. I know the exact shape of the thing you're carrying. I've carried it since I was 6, and I'm going to tell you the truth nobody told me. I held on. You didn't matter tonight because you stood in front of the fire. You'd have mattered to me if you'd hidden in the cellar and cried. The standing in front is what you do. It is not why you're worth keeping. And I cannot choose you. The rite won't let me. The city won't survive it. But I can do this, which is look you straight in your beautiful, terrified face and tell you that you are not the funny one to me. You never were. Not for 1 second since you noticed I liked the city." He tried to deflect it. Of course he did. It was the only armor he had. "Careful," he said, and the grin came up like a reflex, shaky at the edges. A man could get ideas. A beautiful woman holding his hands on a terrace at dawn, telling him he matters. "Then get them," I said. "Get all the ideas, Cass. I'm not taking it back to make you comfortable. That's the move, isn't it? That's how it's always gone for you. You say the true thing, and the other person laughs, or fields it lightly, or lets you turn it into a joke so nobody has to sit in it. I'm not going to. I'm going to sit in it with you, in the awful sincere quiet, until you believe I meant it, because that's the thing nobody ever did for me either, and I've wanted it my whole life, and I'm not going to be too much of a coward to give it to you just because it's uncomfortable." His grin died for the second time that night, slower this time. The grief that crossed his face was so total and so naked that I felt it knock the breath out of all 4 threads at once. And Cass, golden, glib, unchosen Cass, put his forehead down against our joined hands like a man who'd been standing a very long time and didn't say anything clever at all, for once, which was how I knew I'd reached him.
I didn't sleep again that night.
I sat up in the scorched tower with 4 exhausted men in various stages of pretending they weren't sleeping near me on purpose, and I did the arithmetic the way I'd been doing arithmetic my whole life, except now the numbers were people. Sable's mother had built a perfect plot. Frame the houses into a war they'd start themselves, stay clean, rule the ashes. She'd weaponized the one law everyone trusted, the no-choosing law, the accord, the rite, and she'd reckoned, correctly, that 4 proud houses would rather believe each other guilty than look for the cold woman in the violet tower pulling the strings. She'd made one mistake, the same one she'd made before, the same one they all made. She'd bound 4 lonely men to a foster kid who knew exactly what it felt like to be made into a monster by people who found it convenient. Rune, framed tonight as a killer. Cass, raised as a spare. Sable, raised as a weapon. Bram, I'd find out soon enough, with his own scar. For men the city would find it so easy to believe the worst of, bound to the one person alive who had made a life study of being believed the worst of, and survived it, and learned the one thing Sable's mother never had. That the people everyone finds easy to throw away are exactly the people who, once they decide to stay, cannot be made to leave. And there's the other thing, the one I turned over with more care, because it scared me, what I'd done to Cass's fire. I'd felt the house's whole theory of me crack in that moment. Keystone as passive anchor, keystone as neutral lock, because an anchor doesn't have a cellar full of power, it can pour down a bond on instinct. Sable's mother had built her entire plot around what a keystone was for. But nobody, I was beginning to suspect, actually knew what I was. Not the houses, not the 4 men, not me. They'd hidden me in the human world my whole life to keep me ordinary, and I'd always assumed it was to protect a fragile anchor. Sitting in that scorched tower, I started to wonder if it had been the opposite. If they'd hidden me not because I was fragile, but because I was something the four houses would have gone to war to own, or to bury, the day they found out what the keystone could really do. I didn't have the shape of it yet, but I had the cold edge of it under my ribs, and I knew, the way I'd always known which adults to run from, that it was big, and that it changed everything, and that I had better understand it before somebody else did. I was going to clear Rune's name. I was going to find Sable's mother's next move before she made it. And I was going to do it as the thing she'd never planned for, not a keystone, not an anchor, not a device. A woman with 4 threads in her chest and a paring knife she refused to give back, who had finally, at 26, in a doomed and beautiful city, found for people worth keeping and was not, this time, going to let anyone take them. I just had to do it before noon, when all of Veymoor woke up believing House Tide had tried to murder the keystone, and before whatever Sable's mother had planned to light the moment the first house reached for its knife. To be continued. That was episode 4 of 4 Crowns. If the 4 of them have you now, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus scenes are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
I'm Mia.
Thank you for listening.